Welcome to session 57 of Through the Bible in 90 Days. Today we will look at three takeaways from Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 23, through Jeremiah chapter 47, verse 7. How God's covenant with his people is unbreakable, and he is faithful to his promises. How God promises a righteous king from David's line who will bring justice, peace, and security to his people, and how God is sovereign over the nations and his judgment is righteous and sure. I'm Dr. J. David Taylor. Remember to subscribe, like, follow, comment, and share. Let's get started. Takeaway 1. God's covenant with his people is unbreakable, and he is faithful to his promises. In Jeremiah chapter 33, verses 25 to 26, God reaffirms his covenant with Israel, saying, "If my covenant be not with day and night, and if I have not appointed the ordinances of heaven and earth, then I will cast away the seed of Jacob and David my servant." Now this passage highlights the eternal nature of God's covenant, emphasizing that just as the natural order of day and night is secure, so too is God's covenant to his people. So for believers today, this reminds us that God's promises are sure and steadfast. His covenant through Christ, the ultimate fulfillment of God's promises, guarantees our eternal relationship with him. In Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 25, it said, "Thus saith the Lord, if my covenant be not with day and night, and if I have not appointed the ordinances of heaven and earth." It goes on to say in verse 26, "Then will I cast away the seed of Jacob and David my servant, so that I will not take any of his seed to be rulers over the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Wow. Takeaway 2. God promises a righteous king from David's line who will bring justice, peace, and security to his people. In Jeremiah chapter 33, verses 14 to 16, God promises to raise up a righteous branch from the line of David, a king who reigned justly and brings salvation to Israel. This is a direct prophecy of the coming Messiah, Jesus Christ, who fulfills his promise through his perfect reign. So for believers today, this passage gives us hope as it speaks to the future fulfillment of God's plan of salvation through Christ, who rules in righteousness and offers his peace to all who trust in him. In Jeremiah chapter 33, 14 and 15, it goes on to say, "Behold, the day comes, saith the Lord, that I will perform that good thing which I have promised unto the house of Israel and to the house of Judah. And in those days and at that time, I will cause the branch of righteousness to grow up unto David, and he shall execute judgment and righteousness in the land." Wow. Takeaway 3, God is sovereign over the nations, and his judgment is righteous and sure. In Jeremiah chapters 46 to 47, God pronounces judgment in Egypt and the Philistines, showing that his sovereignty extends beyond Israel to all nations. Now, Egypt, once a powerful empire, and the Philippines, traditionally enemies of Israel, will both face God's justice. See, this passage reminds us that no nation or individual can escape God's righteous judgment. So for believers today, this passage assures us that God sees all injustice and will ultimately make things right. It also challenges us to live in accordance with God's will, knowing that his judgment is certain and righteous. The Jeremiah chapter 47 verse 2 says this, "Howl, O gate, cry, O city, thou art melted in the midst of the people." Jeremiah chapter 50 verse 9, it said, "For I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country, and they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. Their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man. None shall return in vain." Wow. What would it be like to live in a world where all promises are guaranteed to be fulfilled, where justice is always served and righteousness reigns over every decision? In Jeremiah 33, God reaffirms his covenant with his people, promising that a righteous king from David's line will come and that his reign will be one of justice and peace. But this promise isn't just for Israel. It's for all of us, fulfilled in Jesus Christ, the righteous branch. The question is, are we living in light of this promise? Are we reflecting the justice and the peace of Christ in our lives? Or are we distracted by the false promises of this world. See, the real challenge is just this. How do we live in light of God's unbreakable promises? In Jeremiah 33:25-26, it reminds us that God's covenant with his people is as secure as the natural order of day and night. He will raise up a righteous king from David's line, and his kingdom will be one of justice and peace. But the challenge we face today is whether we will live according to the truth of his promises. In a world full of distractions and false hopes, will we place our trust in God's eternal covenant and the king that he has sent, Jesus Christ? What if we viewed every aspect of our lives through the lens of God's eternal covenant? What if we understood that the peace, the justice, and restoration we seek comes through Christ, the righteous king? See, Jeremiah 33 points to the coming of the Messiah, and through Christ the promise has been fulfilled. The breakthrough idea here, my friend, is that our lives are no longer defined by the chaos of the world or by the empty promises of idolatry. They are defined by the unshakable covenant of God, the reign of Christ, and the hope of a kingdom of peace. When we live in light of this truth, we experience a deep, abiding peace that transcends the circumstances around us. This is your moment. Will you choose to live according to God's promises, my sister, trusting in his sovereignty and the righteousness of Christ's reign? Just as Jeremiah chapter 46-47 speaks of God's judgment on the nations, we are reminded that God's justice is perfect and sure. But God has also promised restoration and peace through Christ. So will you align your life with God's truth and live as a witness of his kingdom? See, Christ's reign offers us justice. It offers us peace, and it offers us security. Let's live in according to that promise. I challenge you today. Will you trust in God's promises, knowing that his covenant with us is unbreakable? Will you live in light of Christ's righteous reign, letting his justice and his peace flow through your life? God's judgment is certain, but his mercy and restoration are also promised to those who trust in him. Today is the day to embrace the hope and restoration that comes from living under the reign of God. Will you live with assurance that God's promises are faithful and true? In response to the love of God for me, I have 3 personal declarations reflecting my willingness to align with God's divine will. I declare that I will trust in God's unshakable promises and live according to the truth of his eternal covenant. I declare that I will embrace the reign of Jesus Christ, the righteous king, and reflect his justice and peace in my life. I declare that I will live in hope and anticipation of the kingdom of God, knowing that his plans for restoration and peace are sure. My time is up. I'm Dr. J. David Taylor. Thank you for joining us. Please remember to subscribe, like, follow, comment, and share. I will see you next time.